Alright everybody, welcome to your third sample question on the topic of orphaned family members. So with the other two topics that we looked at some of those areas having to do with the requirements that the orphan needs to fulfill in order to be able to be sponsored under this program. Now, the scenario we're going to look at right now as well deals with another area of the requirements that those orphans have to meet. And after this, you're going to have, again, a really great understanding of the orphaned family members and how it relates to, of course, your upcoming ICCRC Full Skills Exam. You'll see that this topic is very concise and very straightforward, so it's really great that you're working your way through all of these lessons because it's going to hopefully help you in terms of getting 100% on your upcoming ICCRC Full Skills Exam. Okay, so the scenario here we have Marina. Now Marina is a 17-year-old from Bolivia who recently got married to her long-time boyfriend Marcus. She explains that it's a normal and legal custom in her country for people to get married at this age because the family all live together in the same house, and if Marina has a child, her father would take care of the kid while Marina and her husband work. Marina goes on to explain that her mother passed away during childbirth, leaving Marina and her brother to be raised by her father. Her father grew up in an orphanage, so they do not have any other relatives in the country that they know about since Marina's brother moved to Canada when he was 18 because he married a Canadian. Unfortunately, Marina's father had an accident at work and recently passed away after being in a coma for several weeks. Can Marina's brother sponsor her to immigrate to Canada under the family class? Now when we take a look at our potential answers, we have A, yes, because she does not have any other blood relatives left in her country. We have B, no, the brother cannot sponsor another family member because he was sponsored himself. We have C, no, because Marina would not be considered an orphaned relative. And we have D, yes, because Marina is both an orphan and a lone family member in her country. Alright, so a pretty detailed question here, and you're going to have to look through it to see all those little tiny pieces of the scenario and how it relates to the potential answers. So you can press pause right now and work your way through this, and hopefully you'll get the correct answer. Alright, so when we take a look at that scenario again, and we see all of these really important pieces of information, remember that in your real exam, it's not going to be split up the way that we split it up in these scenarios. So with this question, you know that this is an orphaned family member question. But in your real exam, it's not going to be split up topic by topic. All the topics will be mixed up throughout the exam. So if you're looking through this, you might think that this is a spouse question, or you might think it's a lonely family member question. And of course, those elements certainly play a role in being able to answer this question. That's why those little pieces of information at the beginning here are pretty important, because we have her age, and she got married, and they go on to explain that the marriage is legal in her country. We're going to take a look at spouses, common law partners, and conjugal partners in another lesson later on. But for now, these pieces of information are important for us, of course. Okay, we have a bit of a summary about her family situation. So her mother passed away during childbirth, and both Marina and her brother were raised by her father alone. And they go on to tell us about any other relatives that she has in the country. And they go on again to tell us about Marina's brother and his situation in that he is now Canadian. Finally, at the end, we have the tragic news about her father who passed away. Now, when we take a look at the question as a whole, hopefully it's a little bit more clear. Now, you can see again that the question is, can Marina's brother sponsor her to immigrate to Canada under the family class? And then we have A, B, C, D, and in A, B, C, D, we have 2 yeses, 2 nos. All right, so let's start with one of the easy ones. Now, B says, no, the brother cannot sponsor Marina in this case because he was sponsored himself. When we take a look at spouses later on, there is a sponsored restriction that we definitely have to know in order to pass the full skills exam. But we'll see if it relates to any other areas of the family class. And you'll see that this is one of those really great general pieces of information that you should know already. And that is that in almost every single case, it doesn't really matter if a family member is sponsored himself or herself in order to sponsor another family member, other than that sponsored restriction for spouses. So when we take a look at those sponsor requirements, now the sponsor being 18 and over, Canadian citizen, the undertaking, the agreement, and the LICO, we could see that there doesn't really have anything to do with the person being sponsored himself or herself. If you went through the parents and grandparents lesson and we talked about those sponsor restrictions, remember that's a person who is in some sort of undertaking and maybe owes the government money or owes the bank money or is bankrupt or in prison or defaulted on an undertaking already. But the fact that the person was sponsored as a family member when he or she originally came to Canada is never mentioned throughout that. So with that, we know that B is incorrect. So we eliminated B as a potential answer, and now that leaves us time to look at the other options presented to us. Now let's take a look at another potential answer that is easy to disqualify. Now that is A. So A says yes, Marina's brother can sponsor her because Marina doesn't have any other blood relatives left in her country. Now that we are experts on the lonely family member, we know that actually in terms of sponsoring under this stream, even though we're talking about orphan family members, of course, Marina wouldn't qualify because it doesn't really make a difference if the family member living in the other country doesn't have any family members around. What really matters is, of course, the sponsor. And if the sponsor doesn't have any relatives in Canada who are Canadian citizens or permanent residents, and of course, if that sponsor doesn't have anyone else who he could sponsor to become Canadian. So those are the pieces of the lonely family member that really matter in terms of answering this question. For Marina's situation, it doesn't really make a difference in terms of the brother sponsoring her, either as an orphan or as a lonely family member. So that is why A is also incorrect. So let's take a look now at C and D. We're going to jump ahead here and answer these two together because this is probably what you'll really do in your real full skills exam. So let's take a look at C. Now C says that no, Marina cannot be sponsored by her brother because she would not be considered an orphaned relative. Now when we compare Marina's situation with the requirements that a person needs to meet in order to be considered an orphaned family member, this is of course in terms of immigration, we're looking again at Regulation 117(1)(f). Now you can see that in 1F we have a person whose parents are deceased. Now Marina certainly meets this, who's under 18, and she is definitely under 18 because they said before that she's 17. Here is the tricky part though, who is not a spouse or common law partner. So if you remember from the scenario, they mentioned that Marina got married recently. So that means she is married and she doesn't meet those requirements. Now because we saw that Marina actually doesn't meet the requirements of being an orphaned relative, then D is also incorrect. Because D says yes, Marina can be sponsored by her brother because she's an orphan and also a lone family member in her country. So we saw why D is incorrect earlier, in that with the lone family member in her country area, it doesn't exist, so it doesn't really matter for that. But when we look at the orphan aspect of this and whether or not she meets the requirements of being an orphan, we know again that she does not meet those requirements, which is why D is also incorrect, and C is what is left for us as being the correct answer. Okay, congratulations, you're one step closer to passing the full skills exam because you've conquered another area of the family class. So thanks again for tuning in. I really like talking about this topic. I think it's very concise, very straightforward. And if something like this comes up on the exam, I think that you can hit a home run with this. All right, so thanks again. I know all the work that you're doing in preparing for the big exam. I took the exam myself, of course, same with everyone that works here. So we really appreciate your hard work. Keep it up, and you'll be an RCIC in no time.